Welcome back to the deep dive. Sometimes it feels like the news is just a broken record, right? Replaying the same tunes over and over and over again. And today's topic definitely falls into that category, tariffs.
Okay.
Specifically, former President Trump's recent call for new tariffs on all imported steel and aluminum. You've sent us some really thought-provoking articles on this, so
Yeah.
let's untangle this complex web together and see what it all means for you, for businesses, and for the global economy.
It's interesting you use that broken record analogy because this isn't the first time we've seen this play out.
Right.
Remember back in 2018 when Trump imposed similar tariffs?
Oh, yeah, the tariff
Yeah.
roller coaster ride. But this time it seems like he's up in the ante.
Uh-huh.
What's the key difference between the 2018 situation and what's being proposed now?
The big change is the removal of exemptions. In 2018, certain countries and companies could get around the tariffs, but this time it's a blanket 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports. No exceptions. This could have major ripple effects, particularly for industries that rely heavily on imported metals.
So no more loopholes.
Right.
That definitely raises the stakes. But what's the rationale behind this move? Is it just about bringing back factory jobs like we hear in the headlines?
Well, Trump's argument boils down to this. Higher tariffs will make imported metals more expensive, encouraging companies to buy American steel and aluminum instead.
Okay.
This, he believes, will revitalize the U.S. manufacturing sector and create jobs.
Okay, I get the basic logic, but wouldn't that also mean higher prices for companies that use those materials?
Yeah.
And wouldn't those costs ultimately get passed down to us, the consumers?
That's a key concern. Think about all the things that use steel and aluminum. Cars, appliances, construction materials.
Sure.
If the raw materials become more expensive, the final products will likely cost more too.
Right.
It's a classic case of supply and demand.
So is this a case of trying to protect one sector of the economy at the expense of others?
Potential.
And even then, is it even guaranteed to work? I mean, slapping a tax on imported metal doesn't automatically translate to a surge in factory construction, does it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
While tariffs can offer some protection to domestic industries, it's a bit of a gamble. The 2018 tariffs provide a good case study.
Let's dive into that. What actually happened when those tariffs were implemented? Did we see a triumphant return of manufacturing jobs like Kindy's was promised?
Well, the results were mixed. The steel and aluminum industries did see a small uptick in employment,
Okay.
but the overall economic impact was arguably negative.
Really?
Downstream industries, those that rely on steel and aluminum as inputs, were hit hard. They faced higher costs, which ultimately led to job losses and reduced production. It's estimated that those downstream industries lost billions in output,
Wow.
dwarfing the gains made by steel and aluminum producers.
So it sounds like those tariffs created winners and losers, with the losers potentially outweighing the winners. And let's not forget the potential for retaliation from other countries. Didn't Trump's tariffs almost spark a trade war with Canada back in 2018?
Absolutely. Trump threatened to slap a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, which obviously raised alarm bells in Ottawa.
Yeah.
The Canadian government responded with threats of their own targeting key U.S. industries.
Whoa, a full-blown trade war. That sounds like an economic nightmare.
It can be. Essentially, a trade war is a tit-for-tat exchange of protectionist measures,
Right.
usually tariffs. One country raises tariffs on another's goods, and then that country retaliates with tariffs of its own. It can quickly escalate, harming both economies in the process.
Yeah.
In the case of Canada, cooler heads ultimately prevailed, and a full-blown trade war was averted,
Okay.
at least temporarily.
That's good news. But it does highlight the inherent riskiness of using tariffs as a bargaining chip. It feels like playing with economic fire.
It certainly injects a level of uncertainty into the global trade system.
And uncertainty is never good for business. I'm starting to wonder if this focus on tariffs as a solution to revitalize American manufacturing is missing the bigger picture. Is it really all about cheap, imported metal? Or are there deeper, more systemic issues at play?
You're hitting on a crucial point.
Okay.
There's a whole web of factors that contribute to the decline of manufacturing jobs in developed economies like the U.S., and tariffs alone are unlikely to reverse that trend.
I'm really curious to unpack those other factors. What are some of the underlying forces that are reshaping the manufacturing landscape?
Well, one of the biggest drivers is automation and technological advancements.
Mm-hmm.
Robots and AI are increasingly taking over tasks that were once done by human workers.
I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
Seems like a double-edged sword. Increased efficiency and productivity,
Yeah.
but also potential job displacement.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of globalization. Companies can now source materials and labor from all over the world, often at lower costs than in the U.S.
So it's not just about competing with other countries. It's about competing in a global marketplace where the rules of the game have fundamentally changed.
Precisely. And that raises a critical question. If tariffs aren't the magic bullet for bringing back manufacturing jobs, what other options are there? What can be done to create a thriving manufacturing sector in the 21st century?
That's what I'm eager to explore. What are some of the alternative solutions that policymakers and industry leaders should be considering?
Well, one promising avenue is investing in education and workforce development.
Yeah.
We need to ensure that American workers have the skills and training they need to succeed in a rapidly evolving manufacturing landscape.
That makes sense. We need to equip people with the tools to thrive in a world where automation and technology are playing an increasingly important role.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical skills, it's also about fostering creativity, problem-solving abilities, and adaptability. These are the qualities that will set workers apart in a competitive global market.
So instead of trying to turn back the clock and recreate the manufacturing jobs of the past,
Right.
we need to focus on preparing workers for the jobs of the future.
Precisely. And that means thinking beyond traditional manufacturing roles and embracing new opportunities in areas like advanced manufacturing, robotics, and clean energy technologies.
This is fascinating stuff, and I'm eager to dive deeper into these alternative solutions.
Yeah,
But I also want to circle back to the 2018 tariffs and really understand their impact, both the intended and the unintended consequences.
absolutely. Analyzing what happened back then can provide valuable insights as we try to predict the potential fallout from these new proposed tariffs.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock back to 2018 and take a closer look at what transpired. What were some of the key takeaways from that period?
Well, as we touched on earlier, the steel and aluminum industries did experience some temporary gains in employment and production. However, those gains were arguably outweighed by the negative impacts on downstream industries and consumers. Remember, when the cost of raw materials goes up, those costs inevitably get passed down the chain, leading to higher prices for everything from cars and appliances to construction materials.
Right, it's like squeezing a balloon. You might push the air into one area, but it pops out somewhere else.
That's a great analogy. And we also saw how those tariffs strain relationships with key trading partners like Canada, creating tension and uncertainty in the global market.
And that uncertainty can have a ripple effect, making businesses hesitant to invest and expand, which ultimately hurts economic growth.
Exactly. So while tariffs might seem like a quick fix on the surface, they often create more problems than they solve.
This is where I get a bit lost. How do we balance the need to protect domestic industries with the potential for negative economic consequences? Are there ways to support American manufacturing without resorting to protectionist measures like tariffs?
That's a complex question and there's no easy answer. But I think a good starting point is to shift our focus from protectionism to competitiveness. Instead of trying to shield American companies from global competition, let's focus on making them stronger and more innovative so they can thrive in the global marketplace.
That sounds like a much more sustainable approach. So how do we do that? How do we make American manufacturing more competitive?
Well, we've already touched on a few key strategies: investing in education and workforce development, fostering innovation through public-private partnerships, and creating a stable and predictable regulatory environment that encourages businesses to invest and grow.
These are all really important points, and I'm eager to unpack them further. But before we do, I want to touch on one more aspect of the 2018 tariffs that I found particularly troubling: the impact on consumers.
Yes, that's a crucial consideration. Ultimately, it's the consumers who bear the brunt of higher prices caused by tariffs.
Exactly. I remember reading about how the price of washing machines skyrocketed after the 2018 tariffs were imposed,
Yeah.
and those sorts of price increases hit working families the hardest.
You're right. And it's not just about the sticker price. Higher prices can also lead to reduced consumer spending, which can have a ripple effect throughout the economy.
So it seems like the 2018 tariffs offer some valuable lessons about the potential downsides of protectionist policies. They might provide a temporary boost to certain industries, but they can also lead to higher prices for consumers, strained trade relationships, and overall economic uncertainty.
Precisely. And those lessons are worth keeping in mind as we consider the potential consequences of these new proposed tariffs.
Well, this has been a really insightful conversation so far. We've covered a lot of ground, from the mechanics of tariffs to their historical impact and the broader forces shaping the manufacturing landscape.
We've only just scratched the surface,
Right.
but I think we've laid a solid foundation for understanding this complex issue.
And I'm excited to continue this deep dive in our next segment, where we'll explore alternative solutions for revitalizing American manufacturing and creating a more prosperous future for all.
I'm looking forward to it. It's time to move beyond the simplistic narratives and embrace a more nuanced and comprehensive approach to this critical challenge.
Okay, so we've established that tariffs might not be the magic bullet for bringing back factory jobs. But what are the alternatives? What else can be done to revitalize American manufacturing and ensure its long-term health?
There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but several promising avenues are worth exploring. As we touched on earlier, investing in education and workforce development is crucial. We need to equip American workers with the skills and knowledge to thrive in a technologically advanced manufacturing environment.
We've all heard about the skills gap in manufacturing, but what does that actually look like in practice? What specific skills are needed, and how do we bridge that gap?
The skills gap is very real and it's evolving rapidly. It's not just about knowing how to operate a machine anymore. Today's manufacturing jobs require a blend of technical skills, problem-solving abilities, and adaptability. Think about areas like advanced robotics automation and data analytics. These fields demand a workforce that's comfortable with complex technologies and can adapt quickly to changing demands.
So it's not just about retraining workers who've been displaced from traditional manufacturing jobs. It's about creating a pipeline of talent that's ready to step into these new high-tech roles.
Exactly. And that requires a multifaceted approach. We need to strengthen STEM education at all levels, from K-12 to higher education. We need to expand apprenticeship programs and create more opportunities for hands-on learning. And we need to partner with industry to develop training programs that are tailored to the specific needs of employers.
I'm seeing a theme here: collaboration. It sounds like revitalizing American manufacturing is not just a government responsibility or an industry responsibility, but a shared responsibility that requires a coordinated effort.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another key strategy: fostering innovation through public-private partnerships. By bringing together the best minds from academia, industry, and government, we can create a powerful engine for driving technological advancements and creating the manufacturing jobs of the future.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How would these partnerships actually work? What are some concrete examples of successful collaborations that have led to breakthroughs in manufacturing?
There are some inspiring examples out there. Take the Advanced Manufacturing National Program Office, AMNPO, for instance. It's a federal initiative that facilitates partnerships between industry universities and national labs to develop cutting-edge manufacturing technologies. They've been instrumental in advancing fields like 3D printing, robotics, and lightweight materials, all of which have huge implications for the future of manufacturing.
So it's about creating a space where researchers, entrepreneurs, and industry experts can come together, share ideas, and collaborate on developing innovative solutions. That sounds like a recipe for success.
It is, but it's not just about the technology itself. It's also about creating an ecosystem that supports innovation. That means having access to funding for research and development, a skilled workforce, and a regulatory environment that encourages risk-taking and entrepreneurship.
Right, because even the most brilliant idea won't go anywhere without the right environment to flourish. It's like planting a seed in fertile soil.
Exactly. And that brings us to another critical piece of the puzzle: creating a stable and predictable regulatory environment that gives businesses the confidence to invest and grow. When companies face a tangled web of regulations and uncertainty about future policies, they're less likely to make long-term commitments like building new factories or expanding their operations.
So it's not just about cutting regulations altogether. It's about creating a regulatory framework that's clear, consistent, and supportive of innovation and growth.
Precisely. And that requires a collaborative approach involving input from businesses, workers, and policymakers. We need to find a balance that fosters a dynamic and competitive manufacturing sector while also protecting the environment and ensuring fair labor practices.
I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together. It's not just about tariffs or tax breaks or any single policy lever. It's about creating a holistic ecosystem that supports American manufacturing from multiple angles.
Exactly. It's about investing in our workforce, fostering innovation, creating a supportive regulatory environment, and promoting fair trade practices that level the playing field for American companies.
Sounds like a long-term strategy, not a quick fix.
It is. Revitalizing American manufacturing is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires a sustained commitment from all stakeholders, a willingness to adapt to changing global dynamics, and a focus on creating a future where American manufacturing is known for its innovation, quality, and sustainability.
This brings us to another critical aspect: infrastructure.
Yeah.
We can't talk about revitalizing American manufacturing without addressing the state of our roads, bridges, ports, and energy grids.
You're absolutely right. Infrastructure is the backbone of a thriving economy, and it's especially crucial for a strong manufacturing sector. Modernizing our infrastructure can significantly reduce costs for manufacturers, improve efficiency, and make the U.S. a more attractive location for investment.
I can see how outdated infrastructure could be a major bottleneck. If it takes forever to transport goods or energy costs are sky high, that's going to make it difficult for American companies to compete in the global marketplace.
Exactly. And it's not just about fixing what's already broken. It's about investing in the infrastructure of the future, like smart grids, high-speed rail, and next-generation transportation systems. These investments will pay dividends for decades to come, not just for manufacturing, but for the entire economy.
It sounds like infrastructure investments are a win-win. They create jobs in the short term, boost productivity and competitiveness in the long term, and lay the foundation for a more sustainable and resilient economy.
Precisely. And it's an area where we have a lot of catching up to do. Many other countries have invested heavily in modernizing their infrastructure while the U.S. has fallen behind. We need to make this a national priority if we want to see American manufacturing thrive in the 21st century.
Okay, so we've talked about investing in our workforce, fostering innovation, creating a supportive regulatory environment, and modernizing our infrastructure. Are there any other key ingredients in this recipe for a revitalized American manufacturing sector?
Yes, there's one more crucial element. Promoting fair trade practices that ensure a level playing field for American companies. While tariffs might seem like a way to protect domestic industries, they can often backfire, leading to trade wars and higher prices for consumers. Instead, we need to focus on negotiating trade agreements that benefit American businesses and workers while also upholding high labor and environmental standards.
That makes sense. It's about creating a global trading system that's based on fairness and reciprocity, not protectionism and retaliation.
Exactly. And it's about addressing unfair trade practices like currency manipulation and intellectual property theft that put American companies at a disadvantage. By working with our allies and using the tools of diplomacy and international cooperation, we can create a more equitable global trading system that benefits everyone.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've moved beyond the simplistic narratives about tariffs and really dug into the complex factors shaping the future of American manufacturing.
We've only just scratched the surface, but I think we've laid a solid foundation for understanding the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
And I'm excited to continue this exploration in our next segment, where we'll delve into the potential impacts of these new proposed tariffs and discuss what steps policymakers and industry leaders can take to ensure a thriving and sustainable future for American manufacturing. Okay, so we've laid out a pretty comprehensive roadmap for revitalizing American manufacturing, but let's face it, the elephant in the room is still those proposed tariffs. What kind of impact could they have if they actually go into effect?
That's the million-dollar question, and unfortunately, it's one without a simple answer. As we've discussed, tariffs are a blunt instrument with a mixed track record. They can provide a temporary boost to certain sectors, but often at the expense of others. And let's not forget the potential for unintended consequences, like retaliatory tariffs from other countries, which could spiral into a trade war.
You know, it strikes me that this whole tariff debate often gets framed as a zero-sum game, us versus them, winners and losers. But isn't the global economy far more interconnected than that?
You're absolutely right. In today's globalized world, economies are deeply intertwined. What happens in one country can have ripple effects across the globe. And when it comes to trade, it's often more beneficial to think about how we can create win-win scenarios rather than trying to outmaneuver or punish other countries.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Some argue that these tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair competition. How do we address that concern?
It's a valid concern, and it's important to acknowledge that there are instances where certain industries might need temporary protection from unfair trade practices. However, tariffs should be a last resort, not the first line of defense. And they should be targeted and temporary with a clear exit strategy.
So instead of imposing sweeping tariffs across the board, we should be focusing on addressing specific instances of unfair trade practices through targeted measures and international cooperation.
Exactly. And as we've discussed, there are more effective and sustainable ways to support American manufacturing in the long term, investing in our workforce, fostering innovation, creating a supportive business environment, and promoting fair trade agreements. These strategies will create a more competitive and resilient American manufacturing sector that can thrive in the global marketplace.
This whole conversation makes me think about the bigger picture, the future of American manufacturing in a rapidly changing world. What did that future look like, and what role should government play in shaping it?
That's a great question, and it's one that's being debated in boardrooms, think tanks, and government offices across the country. I think the key takeaway is that American manufacturing can't simply try to recreate the past. The world has changed, technology has advanced, and global competition is fiercer than ever.
So instead of clinging to outdated models, we need to embrace a new vision for American manufacturing, one that's driven by innovation technology and a highly skilled workforce.
Exactly. I envision a future where American manufacturing is at the forefront of advanced technologies like robotics, artificial intelligence, and sustainable manufacturing practices. I see a future where American-made products are synonymous with quality, innovation, and sustainability.
That's a powerful vision, and it
Mm.
sounds like getting there will require a shift in mindset, both from policymakers and from industry leaders.
Absolutely. We need to move beyond the old debates about protectionism versus free trade and embrace a more nuanced and collaborative approach. We need to invest in the future, not try to hold on to the past.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexity of this issue. It's easy to get caught up in the headlines and the political rhetoric, but when you really dig into it, you realize that revitalizing American manufacturing is not a simple task. It requires a multifaceted approach, a long-term commitment, and a willingness to embrace innovation and change.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a conversation that needs to continue. We need to keep asking tough questions, challenging assumptions, and exploring new ideas. The future of American manufacturing, and indeed the future of the American economy, depends on it.
Well said. As always, we encourage you, our listeners, to continue this conversation. Do your own research, talk to people in your communities, and share your insights. The more informed we all are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
And remember, even though we're wrapping up this particular deep dive, the exploration doesn't end here. There are countless other fascinating topics out there waiting to be explored.
So until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those curiosity fires burning. And remember, the world is a fascinating place and there's always something new to learn. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.